Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodall's WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update. I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and my co-host Mike Gast, editor of RV News and former vice president of communications at Campgrounds of America, which KOA is doing awesome this year. I mean, I
Oh,
talked with it.
it's RV travel. Don't get me
Yeah,
involved with
RV
RV news
travel.
yet.
No, RV, not
That
sorry,
might
RV travel.
anger the wrong people.
We don't want to anger too many people. I'm sorry, Chuck. RV travel, RV travel. But I mean, it's incredible what KOA's doing this year, and I mean, I think every week we hear something more about KOA and the growth they're experiencing. So that's incredible. But the whole industry is experiencing growth.
Them and everybody else. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. And our guest today is Jason Epperson. And Jason, just kind of introduce yourself. You founded and work with RV Miles. I guess you just do a ton of stuff.
So, RV Miles started as a podcast, and it's been going strong for about 4.5 years as a podcast. It's the number one RV podcast out there. And we also have two other podcasts. We have the America's National Parks podcast, and we have the See America podcast. And then we have the RV Miles YouTube channel where we do sort of like RV and camping news updates and tips and tricks and stuff like that. And I'm full time on the road with my wife, Abby, and my kids. We've been full time for about 5.5 years now as well.
Yeah, and the full time. I mean, what did you guys do before you decided to go full time?
So we lived in Chicago for 16 years. Abby and I both moved to Chicago to go to college, and we were both in the theater industry. And we she was working as an actor. I was a designer, producer, technician. And we eventually built this website called Performing, which was it was actually a 30-year-old industry newspaper in Chicago for the performing arts that never really made the transition to digital very well. And with the advent of the WordPresses and stuff like that out there, we were able to sort of pick it up and turn it into something, into a digital publication. And we were doing really well with it. And the idea was to bring it around the country to different cities. And we had brought it to Kansas City. We were going to bring it to other cities that had lots of performing arts, and bring sort of this niche industry news concept to them with auditions and all that sort of information. And so we were starting to do that. So we built ourselves an RV. We built a school bus conversion in order to go out and do that. And our landlord raised our rent by $400 a month, and we thought, well, let's just do this let's just go out on the road for a year and see how that goes. And we were already homeschooling the kids, and we're already working online, so we sort of did that and stuck with it. And meanwhile, we thought, well, we could also bring this sort of niche industry news thing that we're doing to the RV industry, because that's what we were sort of learning about and becoming a part of while sharing our travels. And we did that, and it started to do pretty well. And then the pandemic hit, and when the pandemic
Yeah.
hit, the theater industry was the first to shut down, and they've been the last to start back up. And luckily, we had our left foot in the RV industry, where the accelerator was pulled down. So it's been kind of a wild ride.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just incredible. I guess what's your perspective on the number of full-time RVers just in the last couple of years? I mean, it's just amazing. I think every week I hear of new families, or I read about new families I never heard about, just exploring the lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, what's interesting, you see like some of the industry surveys out there say things like maybe 1 to 2% of RVers are full time. And that really doesn't put it into perspective when you're at a campground, because most of those people are using their RV for 13 days a year, whatever they say the average is. But when you're in a campground, the full timers are using theirs for 365 days a year. And then, of course, there's a heck of a lot more people that are just camping seasonally. They're snowbirds. They camp all summer, whatever it is. They hit the road for many months at a time, which to me is basically the same thing as full time, except for they've got a place to go to in the winter. But if you're at a campground and you walk around and talk to people, you find a lot of people are full time now. I wouldn't put a number on it, but a good portion. So it has grown and grown. And we didn't think we were really on the cutting edge of this. We were learning from a lot of people who were putting their information out on YouTube and telling you how to go full time and that sort of thing back when we started. And it seems like in the 5.5 years we've been full time that it has really just exploded in the number of people, in particular the number of families with children that are doing this.
So, what are you experiencing, Jason, with reservations? Are you having a lot more trouble moving around like everybody else in the world, or you got a secret?
Well, for full timers, it's a little different because often we just go where the campground is available, right? So it's a little bit easier for us sometimes, I think, to sort of say, instead of saying we have to be in Orlando for this specific week, we can sort of say we want to be in Orlando, or we want to be in Florida even, sometime in the month of January or whatever it is. It's a little bit easier for us in our particular full-time lifestyle to sort of pick and choose and just go where the campground reservations take us. But it is a lot busier out there, particularly on the weekends. But the big thing that is hitting us, and I know a lot of people, is the increases in pricing. Campgrounds, like everything, have just really sort of skyrocketed in pricing, especially in the popular areas. So we're usually able to find stuff, and we boondock, but we're not like heavy boondockers, and that's really hard to do where we are now out in the southeast. So we're generally booking campgrounds and staying at them, but it's for us in our lifestyle, it's probably 10% harder than it was 2 years ago. But I know for people who have like those specific windows that they have to hit because they have their vacation time or whatever it is, that becomes a lot harder.
I know.
I wrote a column just yesterday for RV Travel on rates and what to expect this summer, and obviously rate management is is a way to manage inventory. And I still work for KOA as a contractor on the KOA directory, and so I talked to a lot of campground owners all year long, and they've said that they've never been busier. They've what used to be a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday kind of off time where they could let some staff get some staff fewer hours, take some time off themselves. That doesn't happen anymore. They're full 24/7, all the time. They've got to go full bore on the staff, and so it's really created a quite a hardship and probably taken some of the fun away from owners too. Do you feel that out there that even Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday it's full boat?
Yeah, at least more full than before. It definitely feels like that people are extending their. We used to, when we started out, the kids would get really excited for the weekend because the campgrounds would fill up with kids on the weekends,
Yeah.
and our kids are dealing with all the old folks like us during the week and bored and wanting to play at the playground with other kids. And definitely there are more families. There are a lot more people at the campgrounds during the week. It still dies down, a bit at a lot of places. And we're state and national park people. We're RV park people. We do a fair mix of everything. And we've actually found though that now as stuff gets busier and busier, it's easier to find sites at the RV parks, and partly because they're more expensive. But um, I think the places that don't assign you a site, like most RV parks do not. Um, they have more flexibility in fitting people in. But if you look at like the public campgrounds, where often you can go on recreation.gov and you can select a site, you know, there's somebody's got this site for 2 days, and then this site for 3 days, and then this site for 4 days, and there are little windows of one night here and one night there and one night there. And if you were able to compress them, you could probably, fit a few more people in, and that gets a lot harder right now. So we have really been looking a lot at going places where they don't guarantee you a certain site um, for finding something open.
So what's your take on the national parks trends towards advanced reservations, even for hiking trails, for major attractions? Is that really gonna, going to the Sun Highway and Glacier? You gotta have a reservation to get on that road
Yeah,
after 9 a.m. That's a huge change for the national
yeah.
parks. Is this a trend that's just here to stay?
I think it is. I think we're going to see more of it. I mean, it's right now. It's like I think Arches, Canyonlands, Rocky Mountain, as you mentioned, Glacier. I don't think Yosemite is returning to it this year. Um, but several of those big parks, particularly the ones that have limited access, um, to very popular areas. Arches, there. So I guess what I'm getting at is, in some places, I think it's a great thing. In some places,
Yeah.
it's challenging. So if you wanted to take a vacation and go to Arches National Park, over the course of the last several years, not just during the pandemic, you were really taking a gamble in the middle of the summer on whether you're going to get into Arches National Park. There's a line that goes for a mile or so of cars waiting to get in, because they shut down the gates when the parking lots fill.
Yeah.
And there's not really room to build those parking lots up. So now you can make a reservation, and you know that you've got your vacation coming up in several weeks, so
Mhm.
you can make that reservation and hopefully uh, have a little more comfort knowing the fact that you can get in. Um, I it's a real dicey thing when you get into talking about building more facilities at national parks, these places where we protect land. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into putting a new parking lot in. They have environmental impact studies, and it goes through 400 people that have to approve it, all that sort of stuff. So it it it's going to be slow moving for them to build anything new in national parks, whether it be parking facilities, campgrounds, entrances, what have you. Even though they've got all this influx of money from the recent bills that have put a lot of money into national parks and our public lands, that's all going to fixing up old stuff. So I do foresee that trend sticking around as long as the parks remain as popular as they are.
I will, just my little story about Arches. My wife and I went there in the beginning of April last year, and I was expecting it to be a lot more difficult to get into, but I must have went on the right day, because we showed up at 8 or 9 a.m. whenever they opened. We were like right there. We got in. There wasn't a huge amount of cars there. Um, throughout the day it kind of got really busy, but as far as getting in, it was really easy. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. But if anybody's ever been to Arches, there's not a lot of room to expand the parking parking lot where Arches is at, and
It,
once you get into the park, it gets a little harder too. So
it, for this whole lifestyle, for traveling, road trip traveling, not just RVing, road trip traveling and camping, it's becoming more of a planned event. And I think
yeah,
a lot of people bristle at that, and that's difficult for a lot of people to take in, because they like the serendipity travel method of just going where the wind blows. And the population's getting bigger. People are enjoying the outdoors more. We haven't even been dealing with, during the pandemic, international visitors. And,
Yeah.
I think 10% of Yellowstone's visitors in a year are international, and we haven't had those people. We haven't had all those tour buses and stuff. So more planning is going to be involved, and that's just the way it is. You can't build campgrounds fast enough, and you folks would know better than me, but I feel like um, the 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 state and federal parks are not building campgrounds much at all. There have been a few here and there, and then a lot of the money that's going into the private campgrounds is going into fixing up old ones, which is great. But all that does is raise the cost of campgrounds without adding a lot more. Some of them are adding new sites and more sites, and there are places where there are new resorts going in, but it's not keeping up with the demand at all.
So we've
Yeah.
seen a lot, Jason. We've seen a lot of consolidation in ownership. We've seen investing companies come in almost weekly. We see a report of a new investment
Oh, yeah.
company coming in and buying an existing campground. So the face of ownership is changing in campgrounds. From your perspective as a full timer, what do you wish campground owners knew that they don't seem to know from your lifestyle?
I think that I actually have this conversation a lot with companies that are looking to build a resort. They call, they want some advice. They want to know what people want, and we do
Mhm.
sort of these hour-long sessions where we talk about what people want, and they want to know about numbers of hot tubs and things like that, and pickleball courts and all that. And um, my first thing is always is letting them know that a lot of people choose this lifestyle because they have a perception that it's going to be somewhat affordable, or at least they can control the cost a little bit more than having to fly on an airplane and go to a hotel. And that once they get there, they they want a peaceful experience with clean sites, clean bathhouses, clean everything, and friendly staff. Those are the biggest things:
Mhm.
affordability, cleanliness, and nice people. And if you can get past that, then all the amenities can be great. Some of them can be a heck of a lot of fun, and a nice way to spend some leisure time. But we're not everybody, but the way we travel, we're not going to an RV park to experience the RV park. We're going to Tucson to experience Tucson, and the RV park is just where we're staying. And it's nice if it's a nice place, but affordability often wins out. So I think it's important for some of these folks to realize that. But I do think a lot of these big companies that are coming in actually do get it, and they are particularly on the positive experience with the staff and all that sort of stuff. That side of it, and the positive experience with making reservations, and being able to accomplish that task, because that's one of the biggest challenges in when you're looking at making a reservation and places are booked up, when you're having to pick up a phone during business hours and call all these campgrounds instead of being able to go online and find their availability, that sort of stuff, or use their online chat, whatever it is. A lot of these corporations have a lot of the hotel industry background, and they're improving a lot of that stuff. We're seeing lots of cool things out there. Like we were at a campground in Utah several months ago, where they had a texting system that was just great. So they would text you on the day you're coming in with, like, 4 or 5 basic rules, your site number, and then a map of the park, and you didn't have to talk to anybody. You just drove into your site, and then while you were there, somebody left XYZ at the swimming pool. They send out a mass text to everybody, and they were responsible about it. Or there's a lost dog. We have it up here. and you'd get maybe 2 or 3 of these a day during your visit. Lots of little stuff like that happening, which is I think is cool stuff that makes the guest experience a little bit better. And training the staff to actually speak to guests, because often when you're at a campground, you may have great customer service people up at the front office, but everybody talks to the maintenance people, right? And sometimes those maintenance people are the real grumpy ones. And there's a lot better atmosphere happening at some of those places, but it's also driving the price up.
Are you, I guess, we've had discussions about this with other people. Are you concerned about this consolidation and some of these new developers with that hotel mindset coming in and maybe changing the perception of what camping is, I guess? Like for me, it's like, mom and pop, like out in nature. You have the amenities, but some of these, I think when I talk with campers or campground owners, current campground owners, they're like, well, some of these new developments that are being built are more, they feel like they're kind of taking that away. I guess, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the mom and pop campground idea is a great one when it works, and it does sometimes. Some of them are fantastic, but then sometimes they're terrible. And I think that's why a lot of people, they book KOAs half the time, because they know they go to a KOA, there's going to be a basic level of, this is going to be okay for me, and this is not I'm not rolling the dice on this place. And I think there's a little bit more of that, and for me, when I want that sort of nature experience, I'm going to a public campground. I'm going to one that's a government run campground. Um, and I don't really, I don't think in the entire time I've been doing this, I've ever really expected to have sort of that type of experience at a private RV park. It's happened a few times. There's some great gems of places that feel like a state park, but are an RV resort. But I think that's sort of a pipe dream that is long gone, and really it's about, now camping is mainstream, and for better or worse, it is. So their competition is good. So when you've got big corporations involved in lots of campgrounds, there can be problems with that. But also when there are 2 or 3 in the same area that are fighting for your business, that's a good thing, and that can provide a better experience for people and better rates and all that sort of stuff. And there are efficiencies in having a large corporation run 100 campgrounds as well. So and some people, that's what they want. They want the resort experience anyway. They want the concrete pads, they want the pools, they want the hot tubs, they want the cabanas and all that sort of stuff, and they want activities, and we like that every now and then too. But I think there's room for everything out there if more municipalities were open to more campgrounds being developed.
Now you're trading into dangerous topics for my private campground audience when you start talking about that.
So Jason, are you an occasional boondocker?
Yeah, we do. Oh, we're probably 20% boondocking, more when we're out west.
And is that getting crowded?
Yeah, it's definitely more crowded, especially the more popular spots. There's always this. It's one of my favorite things. I spend way too much time on Facebook, and one of the things I see often in a lot of those Facebook groups is people talking about like how close you should park to somebody when you're boondocking, and the answer is always, I shouldn't be able to see you. And those days are gone. Those days are long gone. If you're going to a popular boondocking spot, there's going to be 5, 6, 10, 12, 14, 15 RVs with you. So for us, what we have found, and I think a lot of people are finding this now too, is that if you start to look away from going to, boondocking outside of Yellowstone or outside of Zion, and you start looking to places that aren't the most popular, whether it be for boondocking or finding a campground, you can find some really cool places that don't have like the national park brand attached to them. Um, that you can really have a great experience at, especially if you're just looking to get out into the wilderness. There's tons and tons of space up in North Dakota and Montana and Nebraska and all sorts of places where there's room, and we have had a lot of luck in those types of places where it's not necessarily a big tourism area, but there's fun stuff to do anyway.
So 5.5 years on the road, Jason, you've got to have a few problems with the RV along the route. You've got to have
Yeah,
it repaired once in a while. What's been your experience?
yeah.
Is that of late? I mean, is it gotten better, worse? Is it almost impossible to get your RV fixed on the road now?
It's hard as a full timer in the first place because you don't want to move out of your home, right?
Yeah.
Um, and when we had our bus conversion, we had all kinds of issues with it, and it spent a lot of time in its repair shops, which is why we no longer have it, because we were facing a $20,000 engine rebuild, and that just wasn't going to happen. Um, we have we have had a lot of luck with mobile technicians, and I fix a lot of stuff myself. And I think that's kind of a mentality you have to have as a full timer. But generally, we've had a lot of success with mobile technicians. It can be a challenge with mobile technicians from the other folks that I talk to and campgrounds that have issues, um, particularly when, oh, I don't know, say you're down in Texas and it's about to get in the teens at night, and people are finding out their furnace doesn't work.
Mhm.
Just like with homes, when it starts to get cold, the furnace technicians, they're few and far between because they're so darn busy. Um, there's a lot more of that going on. I've yet to have to take any of our three, any of our two actual Elkhart built RVs, um, into a shop. Anything that a technician couldn't do. But that wasn't the same with our bus conversion where it had engine problems. So
Mhm.
I guess it's hard for me to judge, but I haven't had an issue calling a technician out.
What kind of RVs do you guys have? Nope.
Try that again, Ben.
Uh-oh, I lost
Oh,
what you're saying
oh,
there.
what kind of RVs do you have, Jason? Oh,
So we had the bus conversion for our first 3 years on the road. Then we moved into a 36-foot travel trailer, that we were in for 2 years, and now we're in a 42.5-foot fifth wheel. We're brand ambassadors for Sabre, Forest Rivers brand Sabre now, and we've been in our Sabre since August.
okay. How long? I guess that kind of tips into the backlog conversation. I guess how long did you have to wait for that unit to be ready?
um, it did get delayed a few times because we were supposed to get it in May, and like I said, we got it in August. But part of that delay was self-inflicted because at some point they said, well, if you just wait another month, we'll just give you a 2022 instead of a 21, and we decided to do that. So we did have some delays. It wasn't too bad. Sabre Sabre was pretty good about keeping their production where it was the entire time during the pandemic. I think part of the um, cool thing about their model is they only make 5 floor plans. They're all fifth wheels. They all share the same interior finishes um, and all that sort of stuff. So they're not in a situation where they have 7 different water heaters that they're dealing with or whatever it is. And I think that helps them excel during this crazy time where people have been waiting.
Oh,
Yep, we lost him.
we lost him.
Oh, we were doing so good, Ben.
I guess the internet didn't want to hear anymore about Forest River Sabre. So those
Yeah,
are good
boy,
RVs, though.
they maybe
So,
have a kill switch on us.
but I mean, it's always great to hear from Jason. It's been a while since I spoke to him in person, but he is just very good at kind of explaining what's going on.
Oh, here he comes
Jason,
back.
you're back with us. Can you hear us?
I'm back,
All
but
right.
you sound like a chipmunk.
I sound like a chipmunk.
How about me, Jason? Oh, we lost
Nope,
him again.
you
So
lost them again.
that's
Well,
life on the road now.
I guess. I mean, that's just the way it is with the internet access and Wi-Fi. Uh, so, I think he mentioned before the show he has 3 different cell phones or internet providers that he works with. So, um, I can't imagine trying to connect sometimes on the road. It kind of depends on where you're at. So,
Well, and there's so much life on the road right now that's still getting figured out. I've here he is
There we
again. I've been
go.
going
There we
through
go.
just signing up for Medicare and realizing that the insurance companies don't make their product easy to transport.
yep.
It's kind of based on state things, and there's so many issues to full timing. I think that the companies that are in charge of it or have their finger on the pulse of it don't really consider the fact that some people don't have stable or located homes in a certain state, and so you've got to make it a little bit more amenable to moving around the country like Jason does.
Yeah, and I think as more people get on the road and work remotely and do the full timing thing, I think some of that stuff may change. But I think before COVID, this was foreign to a lot of people. So it's
Hmm.
amazing how many remote workers there are nowadays. I've worked remotely for 6 years now, and up until 2020, um, when I spoke with people, I was one of the only people I knew that worked remotely. So now when I speak with people, there's tons of people that work remotely. So
Jason, do you see, campground crowding aside? We all know that the campgrounds are full and they're full 7 days a week, and it's become a little bit more stressful to own one. But has the overall personality of campers changed? Are they as knowledgeable as they were before? Are they a little bit harder to deal with the newbies?
I hear that a lot. That there's a lot of new people and they're don't know what they're doing and that sort of stuff, and they need a lot of help. And maybe there's a little bit of that. Maybe I see people having a harder time backing into their site often, and they usually have temp tags on their RV or something like that. But in terms of like uh, politeness and respect and how they act in the campground, I've never seen an issue at all. And in fact, I think it's a little bit the opposite. I see people getting grumpy about so many new people, and there's a lot of like get off my lawn stuff happening where there's a mentality that people that were doing this before um, have some entitlement towards it, and that these new people will all go away at some point or something, or and I don't foresee that happening. But
yeah.
also, I think it's great that there are so many new people doing this, and I love to talk to them, and they're way more educated about this though than anybody was 10 years ago. I mean, think
Hmm.
of all of the platforms they have to learn about what they're doing in a campground. They've got their I would say a good half of our viewers don't have an RV because they're learning about the lifestyle. They're deciding whether they want to do it. They're learning how to do it, all that sort of stuff in advance. And I love helping people through that decision making process, and through entering into RVing, because I think it's a great opportunity to explore the country. And more than that, full timing I think is a great opportunity to live a minimalistic lifestyle, um, and to sort of just do something different. And I see people researching and heavily trying to learn about this before they do it.
So what's the future hold for the Emerson family? Is this a forever lifestyle, or is this something you're going to have to work out of eventually?
Well, we always say it's a family decision. So we've got 3 kids. They're 8, 11, and 14. And we do every year. We have a little talk, and we ask everybody if they're still happy with this, whether they'd rather go back to being in a house or something like that. For now, this is what we want to do. I mean, I think there are a lot of people that have come off the road as full timers,
Yeah.
that I've talked to in the past couple of years, and um, for a lot of different reasons, not just because it's more difficult. And there's certainly some that's why. But I think for a lot of us that do this, it's kind of always about the people that choose this type of lifestyle are always kind of about the next thing anyway. So for us, when people ask me what my favorite place in the country is, I always say the next one. And I think that goes a little bit further into the lifestyle, right? So once I would love to, go live in Europe for a little bit. I would love to go live on a boat for a while. All those sorts of things. I would love to own a house. I've never owned a house. I had like 12 different apartments in Chicago over 16 years. I would love to own a house and some land someday. I think that would be cool. So I think, eventually we'll buy a house and we'll move to more part-time. I think RVing is going to be a big part of our life. Even if we buy a house and live in it just in the winter or whatever it is. But really, we don't really think about that too much. I mean, there are questions about college and that sort of stuff for our kids, but they're happy with what we're doing now, and as long as they're happy, it's what we'll do for the time being.
Well, you could always ship your RV over to Europe, right? And RV over in Europe.
Ours is a little too big for that.
Ours is a little too big for that. Okay. Well, I guess you could always get a smaller European RV. So they got smaller streets over there, I guess. So, well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So it was great getting to talk with you, Jason, and getting an update on what you're doing.
Thanks so much for having me. We appreciate it.
That's great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, and thanks everyone for watching, and everyone have a great rest of the week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.